Welcome to World Affairs Today, brought to you by the World Affairs Council, Washington, D.C., a leading forum for global education and international affairs.
Brazil and the United States have a long and valued positive relationship. Population of Brazil in 2015 is estimated at about 215 million. Landmass, same as the United States in approximate size. 85% of the population is urban, white about 48%, blacks 43%, principal language, as you all know, Portuguese. Religion, Roman Catholic, 64%, Protestant, 22.2%. In its geography, rich in natural resources, its land use, 33% agriculture, 62% forest. Economy, world's leading exporter of sugar, coffee, beets, and orange juice. Soybeans, one of Brazil's fastest growing shipments. Other major exports, aircraft, vehicles, iron ore, steel, textiles, and footwear. Education, 92% of the population literate. We welcome a new ambassador from Brazil to our podium tonight. Our organization, the World Affairs Council, of which I have the honor of being the president and CEO, has had a long and valued relationship, Ambassador, with your nation. Our former ambassador is now, from Brazil, is now the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Came back here when the head of state had her visit with President Obama earlier this year. His Excellency Luiz Alberto Figueiredo Machado is our new ambassador for Brazil to the United States. He was previously at the UN, where he served with distinction, also worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a globalist and someone with a very strong focus on the topic of our discussion here tonight. And that is the attendance and participation by Brazil and the United States and other nations around the world at the COP21 UN-sponsored meetings in Paris on one of the great challenges of our time, global climate change, sustainability, resilience, and how collectively our world, with some strong leadership from the United States and Brazil, we hope, will motivate others to not only commit to doing something, but to go into action to do something to stop the degradation of our planet. We're very fortunate tonight to have Elliot Duringer, who is our discussant, the Executive VP, Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, where he oversees research, policy, outreach, and communications efforts. Prior to that, VP for International Strategies at the Pew Center on Global Climate Change. Mr. Duringer was President Clinton's spokesperson at the White House, Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Press Secretary, a mighty load for any man, where he helped develop policy initiatives and led communication strategies on the environment and was a member of the U.S. delegation for international climate change negotiations. He's also an accomplished journalist, reporter, editor at the San Francisco Chronicle early in his career. He covered the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. I asked Ambassador, in coming here tonight, to speak frankly with this audience. The audience you have here tonight at the World Affairs Council, Ambassador, are people who are familiar with the topic of this address tonight. They are friendly and they are frank. in terms of the Q&A that they will engage with you on. So it is with great pleasure that we welcome to our podium for the first time the new Ambassador of Brazil to the United States.
Well, thank you very much. I first of all would like to thank the World Affairs Council for this invitation. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to talk about an issue, climate change, which I am so attached to and very fond of for some time. And to be here with Elliot Diringer, whom I know for as many years as I deal with the climate change. So it is a double pleasure indeed. Yes, as you said, Tony, climate change is one of the greatest challenges facing our economies and societies. We don't have to be scientists to understand the basic message of the scientific community that human activity is changing the world's climate system, causing serious impact, putting people at risk, and posing challenges to sustainable development. We may say that the climate system is going through a period of maybe natural warming, but it does not explain the amount of warming that we are having. The only explanation is the intervention by man. As you are all aware, we are only a few weeks away from the Paris Climate Conference, where we expect to adopt a fair and ambitious climate agreement. Brazil and the United States, in that context, we share not only a commitment to taking domestic action, but also a clear interest in resolving potential obstacles in order to make a new agreement under the Climate Change Convention possible in Paris. There you will certainly see Brazilian and U.S. climate negotiators working together as they have done in the past, engaging in frank and constructive discussions with the goal of bringing our respective positions closer together, and with the final goal of achieving, as I said, a fair and ambitious agreement in Paris. As you probably know, President Dilmah Rousseff visited the U.S. not long ago, and both President Rousseff and President Obama, they clearly shared a strong engagement on climate change. And in the context of that visit, both presidents have adopted an important joint statement on climate change last June. The statement was significant not only because our two presidents shared a common vision regarding the Paris Agreement, but also because they decided to launch a joint initiative that will enhance our bilateral cooperation on climate change. And we also announced a joint commitment to reaching a share of 20% renewable sources other than hydropower in their electricity mixes by 2030. This is something extremely important. It's not easy. When we are talking about 2030, we are talking about, both from the viewpoint of the US and of my country, we are talking about countries that would be very different from what they are now, that will be much bigger than what they are now. And to be able to have this vision and to engage clearly in increasing the share of renewables in their electricity, it is something that we all should applaud. Since they launched this joint initiative, things are moving fast. Monday last week, Brazilian and American climate experts met in Brasilia for the kickoff meeting of the Brazil-US Climate Change Working Group. The bilateral working group focused on three main areas: sustainable land use, adaptation, and clean energy. The working group meeting has already made progress on sustainable land use, which is, of course, important for both countries. And we are going to work together to promote incentives that add value to standing forests and promote the enhancement of forest sinks. We will also work together to increase scientific knowledge on reducing emissions and enhancing resilience in agricultural landscapes. On clean energy, both sides want to take advantage of the abundant renewable resources, both in Brazil and in the US, to expand existing collaboration in this area, especially in terms of research and development. 2 weeks ago, our Minister of Mines and Energy, Eduardo Braga, was here in Washington for an extremely productive meeting with Secretary Ernest Moniz, the Secretary of Energy. The guidelines on bilateral cooperation defined by them will be discussed at greater detail at a meeting of the high-level strategic energy dialogue, which will happen next year here in DC. So I am telling you that to say that we are moving ahead on what the two presidents agreed to in June. On adaptation, we expect to enhance cooperation on measures to reduce the risks associated to climate change, such as drought and extreme weather events. As you know, in September, Brazil presented its nationally determined contribution to the new climate agreement, which is seen, and rightly so, as extremely ambitious. On mitigation, Brazil intends to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 37% in 2025 and by 43% in 2030, and that's below 2005 levels. This is an economy-wide target with absolute reductions. This is a significant change compared to our Copenhagen target, which was a reduction vis-à-vis a business as usual growth trajectory. And by doing that, Brazil will be one of the few developing countries that will assume this kind of targets, economy-wide targets, and an absolute reduction vis-à-vis the year of 2005. On adaptation, which is extremely important because, as we know, some of the damage caused by climate change will occur. There is nothing we can do now to avoid some of the foreseen damage. So we have to work hard for adaptation. We launched on October the 8th a process of public consultations of our National Adaptation Plan, which will have an emphasis in protecting our most vulnerable communities. It is important to stress that, because in looking at the problem of climate change, we have to understand that it will strike much more those who are more vulnerable, the poor, indigenous populations, traditional communities, and we have to act with full respect to the rights of these communities, but also in a way that will help protecting them from the consequences of climate change. I have also to stress that one thing that I am sure all those who are familiar to climate change negotiations know, on the question of financing action. In our case, we have said that our commitment is not contingent upon international support. Though, of course, we would welcome support by developed countries with a view to enhancing global benefits. In that sense, we are also ready and willing to enhance South-South cooperation. We think that South-South cooperation in the area of climate change is key, although it's only complementary to North-South cooperation, but it's key to address some of the common problems that countries in the South have, and that may benefit from this kind of cooperation. In our case, we have a particularly good experience in monitoring forests. It's a long experience in this area, and we shared this experience and images with countries of the South around the world. And that's the kind of contribution that I think is complementary to the obligations that developed countries have in the convention in terms of support, but at the same time, it is a very useful cooperation. And I would like to end by saying something. By adopting a commitment that is economy-wide and a commitment of absolute reductions vis-à-vis the year 2005, which, by the way, at levels that are important, we are not doing that because we think that we are the most responsible country for the problem of climate change. What we think really is that we are all in the same boat, and we all have to do our part, and we all have to do our share in order to fight that common problem. And by doing that, we hope that other countries that historically have contributed more to the problem and that have more means to help fighting it will also jump aboard, like in this case the US and Brazil are doing. Will jump aboard and help us all in Paris to achieve that new agreement, which is crucial for the future of the fight against climate change. We will not win the war against climate change in Paris, but we will definitely lose it if we don't have a meaningful result as quickly as possible. And Paris is the time for achieving that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'd like to start just by saying what a pleasure it is to see you again and to lend my welcome as well to Washington.
Thank
you. As you know well, one of the most difficult issues and a perennial issue in the climate negotiations is the question of differentiation, the distribution of responsibilities and efforts across developed and developing countries. And that remains an issue heading into Paris, certainly, and I think we may well be on the verge of a fairly historic shift in our understanding around that issue. And Brazil has been playing a leading role in the negotiations and helping to advance those discussions. Has put forward a proposal, one feature of which is the expectation that all countries over time move toward the type of target you described, an absolute economy-wide target, as Brazil has now put forward. And I would very much want to underscore the significance of that. I think there is perhaps only one other developing country, South Africa, that at this stage has taken that step. And this is a target that we historically have expected developed countries, certainly a type of target that we've expected. So it's very significant now to see some of the leading developing countries adopt that as well. So two questions for you. How do you see the Paris Agreement addressing this question of differentiation? And what is it that has enabled Brazil to take that step, to shift from, as you described, a reduction against business as usual, to a very ambitious absolute economy-wide target?
Well, thank you very much. Well, first on the question of this initiative, we feel that the Paris Agreement has to be very respectful of the possibilities of different countries. Differentiation is a fact. It's not something that was invented. We have real reason to expect that some countries could do more than other countries. The amount is up to each country to determine, and that's how the negotiation has evolved, leading to Paris. I would describe our decision as being extremely ambitious, but at the same time, trying really to move forward, trying to do as much as we can, in the hope that by doing that, and I see that many countries are doing that, trying to do as much as they can, and by doing that, we will manage to again enter in a new phase of the fight against climate change. As I said, that's not the end of the war. That's the beginning of a new phase of the combat against climate change. But it's really the first time in recent history that we see an opportunity for a meaningful result that would take us closer to the objective of keeping the increase of temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. And that's what we did.
So one more question, if I might, before I open it to the audience, and this has to do with the role of heads of state. We expect quite a few heads of state at the Paris conference, and I think the last time we had such a large number was Copenhagen, and things didn't turn out quite the way anyone really expected there. I seem to recall...
We were there.
Yes, and as well as your president. And I seem to recall a moment where President Lula remarked, with perhaps a touch of annoyance in his tone, that he hadn't expected he was coming to Copenhagen to actually negotiate the agreement. And that was the way Copenhagen went. This time, heads of state are invited to join the conference at the beginning rather than the end, I think to avoid that type of scenario. But what do you think is the proper role of heads of state in a negotiation of this sort? And do you think that we can expect that even once they have left the conference, they will continue to play some part in helping to ensure a successful outcome?
Well, first of all, I think they are there to give political direction to not only to their own negotiators, but to the whole conference. They are there to give inspiration. They are there to mobilize public opinion, but also to send a very clear message. Here I am, and I'm coming from afar, and I'm here not because I like to travel. We are all very busy people. So we are here to say we have to do that. We have to achieve a good agreement, an agreement that will move us forward in a meaningful way. And I think their presence is extremely welcome in that sense, to give inspiration, but also to give a clear political direction.
So, open it now to your questions.
Mr. Ambassador, I'm Tom Reckford, a former president of this World Affairs Council. We all know that President Dilma Rousseff's popularity has had difficult times in the last year, and her approval ratings are, I'm afraid, in the single digits. Is her government strong enough right now to live up to the commitments that it makes in Paris?
Of course, yes. But I don't think that governments are measured by popularities. They are measured by other criteria. I know of presidents in different countries that had very low popularity rates, and this didn't reduce their power or their capacity to lead a country. But also, I must say that our commitment is for the year 2025 and also 2030. So it's not for one government, it's for several governments, as are the commitments by the current U.S. government that will not be there in 2025, but at the same time we all believe that what will be committed by this government will be taken on by all governments until at least 2025.
Our next question, please.
Hi, Ambassador. Thank you very much for your time today. My title isn't as impressive. I'm Eric Cohen. I'm an undergraduate student at the George Washington University. I had a quick question about Paris. So do you think that developed countries like the United States and many other countries should return or begin using a cap and trade approach to try to reduce CO2 emissions?
Well, we are not in our INDC. We are not necessarily embarking on a cap and trade for emissions inside the country. We are not against that. We have seen in the past, including in Kyoto, examples of how the market can help. So trading is something that has its place, definitely. It is useful, but of course it needs also a number of regulations, as we had in the Kyoto context, to make sure that 1 ton of CO2 means 1 ton of CO2 for everybody. So but should be short. No, we are not envisaging at this point in time to use internally a system of cap and trade. We are not against it in the context of the global agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, my name is Chris Holly. I'm a reporter for the Energy Daily, and I too was at Copenhagen and about a dozen other of these COPs. I wanted to ask if you could kindly share with us your vision or expectation of how an agreement on the finance package will look. Obviously, it's a very important issue. It may be the most important issue in getting a final agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a crucial issue, the issue of support to enhanced actions by developing countries is certainly an issue for two reasons. One, because it is a clear need out of the reality. I mean, it's clear, it is part of the reality that that countries and many countries will need support for action and also support for adaptation. But also it is it is part of the legal framework of the Climate Change Convention, which is the guide for the new agreement. So it's not strange to have means of implementation, as you know well, as part of the future agreement. In Copenhagen, you remember that developed countries pledged a certain amount of money, $100 billion by 2020. Hopefully Paris will build on that, because we are looking at a horizon that goes beyond that year. So hopefully Paris will build on that, and the Green Climate Fund will be used as one of the keystones of support in the context of the new agreement.
I wanted to maybe step back a little bit and talk about multilateralism more generally. My only direct exposure to the multilateral process has been through the climate process. And I think it's known as a challenging process, and colleagues who have engaged in other multilateral processes have often remarked on its distinct nature. You've had experience in other multilateral processes. So I'm wondering if you could reflect a little bit on how this process is different, and whether you think that success or failure in Paris is important to the future of multilateralism.
Well, I think it's a very interesting question. If you engage in multilateral negotiations, in general, they require a high level of knowledge of the subject at hand, of course. Climate change goes way beyond that. If you want to speak meaningfully about climate change to a fellow negotiator, you have to do your homework. You have to study the science of climate change. And frankly, that's what I did for many years, to study the reports of IPCC, but not only that, the scientific literature as a whole in this area, because you have to be aware of what science tells you. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to be meaningful on a negotiating table. As I said, in other processes, you have to know the files. But I think that in climate change, you have to go deeper
A fatter
than
file.
usual. Yeah, definitely.
So we do have some questions.
Yes.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for this, your appearance this evening. My name is Stephen Davis. I've been a member of the World Affairs Council for many years. Forgive me if I go over a little territory that you may have covered before I arrived, but it seems that the broader the framework this conference can adhere to and work towards resolution of not just the moral imperative, but the pragmatic and financial and humanitarian imperatives, if we look 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, what sense of urgency do you feel, not just from your country, but from other countries around the world as they attend this conference?
Well, thank you. I have kids. I hope to have grandchildren sometime, and I definitely want to do my best so that they have a healthy planet. That's a personal view, but at the same time, I think that those who are negotiating climate change, they don't think much different from that. They understand the urgency. They know the science. As I said, we have to understand the science, at least understand the science. So we know what can happen and what will happen if we don't do what we must do. So I think there is this sense of urgency. And this sense of urgency is there for some years now. The difference now is that we are seeing a clear possibility of a meaningful outcome. Actually, it would be a breakthrough more than a meaningful outcome. So the possibility is there, and I think, and I'm very hopeful that we will get there.
My name is Daniel Rivera. I'm here on behalf of young professionals in international affairs, a nonpartisan organization. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the Millennium Development Goals and now the new Sustainable Development Goals, and how countries prioritize their initiatives about climate change and how they align with agreements made in either the UN or the World Bank and other international organizations.
Thank you. It's good that you mentioned something that I was also very involved in, which was the both Rio 92 and Rio Plus 20. In Rio Plus 20, as you know, we determined that we should go beyond the Millennium Development Goals and try to find goals that would take care of sustainable development as a whole, and that would apply to both developed and developing countries. As you know, the MDGs were only for developing countries. Now we have something for both groups, and that's important because sustainable development has to be integrated. And with that vision of goals that would be applicable to all countries, there comes climate change, because climate change is clearly one issue of global impact. And we see climate change and the fight against climate change as passing through all development goals, all sustainable development goals. It's one of those issues like fighting poverty that have to be addressed everywhere.
Ambassador, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. My name is Emily Horak, and I'm a student at the George Washington University. My question is, oftentimes we see that the people in society who are the most marginalized and disadvantaged are disproportionately affected by climate change. What do you think the role of the international community is to ensure environmental justice?
Well, that's a very important point in environmental justice. And as you said, Climate change is one of those issues that will affect more those who have contributed less to the problem. This happens inside countries, but this happens clearly in the international community. Small countries that did nothing to create the problem will be hit very hard by the problem. So that's a question. That's a very important question. We cannot run away from that fact. And that's why the support that I was referring to and that was mentioned in a previous question, the support to developing countries is crucial, including in the area of adaptation. Things like early warning and all kinds of relief that can be given to more vulnerable communities. So definitely this is an issue, and definitely this issue will be present in Paris. Thank you.
My name is Michael Reddy. I'm a freshman at GW. I was just wondering, before we go into Paris, specifically in Brazil, obviously the Amazon rainforest is a big natural resource. How does the Brazilian government seek to solve the issue of the deforestation of this precious land?
Well, thank you. As you may know, we have made huge progress in that area. We have reduced the deforestation by more than 80%. So it is a problem. It is a problem that we have to be constantly aware of and addressing it and taking action. There are very kinds of actions that you have to take. The first one that we do is command and control actions. You have to put laws in place, and you have to have enforcement of these laws. So that's a part of it, command and control. But of course, if you take into consideration that the Amazon forest that you mentioned is the size of continental Europe, command and control does part of the job. You also have to address very concrete issues about the livelihoods of those who live in the forest. They need to have economic alternatives that are different from cutting trees. And this is a long-term proposition. It's totally different from command and control, which may be immediate. Okay, you go there, you see a sawmill, the police goes there, it is illegal, people get arrested, that's fine. But what happens to those who work there, who have to have their livelihoods guaranteed in some way? So that's the second part, is addressing alternatives to illegal deforestation, and that's something that we are doing. So it's a combination of different policies. There's no one single answer, and we are very happy that we have achieved a lot. But we know very well that we cannot think for 1 minute that we have solved the problem. We cannot think for 1 minute that what we have done is enough. No, we have to continue doing, because continuing doing is what will take those levels lower and lower. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, if I may rudely follow up on my finance question.
Please.
What I'm looking for is your idea about a possible bridge between the developed and developing countries that would resolve, in most respects, the distrust that both parties, both sides, may have on this issue. I mean, what tools, what diplomatic tools are there that would allow an agreement on the finance package?
Well, that's again, it is an excellent question, and a question that it's really very difficult to have a complete answer on. As you know well, this is an issue that's been there for decades, and from one side, developing countries complain that developed countries don't do what they promise, and they don't provide the support, not only funds, but also tech transfer of clean technologies. And on the other side, developed countries say, no, we are doing that. And it is strange that you don't see it. And then people say, well, okay, so let's do monitoring and verification of that. And it seems that so far that's not possible. And that's part of the conversation. I think both sides have extremely valid points. The bridge, it's to be built, hopefully in Paris, because if we don't have that bridge, this issue will continue to be, this problem will continue to elude us. And frankly, action against climate change requires a global engagement, and that's part of a global engagement, is how to make it possible for countries who don't have the means to be part of that global engagement. I mean, it's not a theoretical issue. It's a very concrete issue. And certainly, we have to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you all for your questions. I think we're really very fortunate to have someone like you, Mr. Ambassador, who has studied the science and who knows this brief so well, here in Washington with us, representing one of the major powers that really is showing such leadership and trying to help move us all toward a stronger global response to climate change. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. And is there?
No, I would just like to say that I thank you so much for being here and for the interest, the clear interest that you all have on this issue. This is a crucial issue. This is something that has to do with our common future. And it is important that in this country, people who are leaders in different fields, that they are all aware, they are all engaged, and they are all backing this global movement for that long fight against climate change. Again, we are not going to solve everything in Paris, but we must not miss the opportunity of giving a huge step forward, of making a huge step forward in Paris. Thank you all very much. It was an honor.
Thank you for joining us for World Affairs Today, a production of the World Affairs Council, Washington, D.C. Stay connected with us at www.worldaffairstoday.org.